Victor leaned over to his assistant, his voice dripping with disdain as he muttered under his breath. Look at this. First class is getting inclusive these days. The assistant adjusted her tablet nervously, glancing around the cabin before replying. Sir, I'm sure she belongs here. Everyone has a ticket. Victor cut her off mid-sentence, his smirk widening as he gestured vaguely toward Elena. Oh, I bet she does. Probably won it in some charity raffle or something. You know how they love giving handouts to. He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air like smoke. The businessman seated nearby shifted uncomfortably in his seat, pretending to focus on his laptop screen but clearly straining to hear. No one dared to look directly at Victor, yet every passenger felt the weight of his words pressing down on them. Elena sat across from him, calm and composed, her eyes fixed on the medical journal in her lap. She turned a page slowly, deliberately ignoring him. Her silence was unnerving, almost palpable, as if she were shielding herself with it. A mother seated a few rows away whispered urgently to her child, Honey, put your headphones on. The little girl frowned but obeyed, casting a curious glance toward Elena before looking away. Victor leaned back in his seat, raising his voice slightly, ensuring others could hear him. Honestly, you'd think people would stick to where they're comfortable. Economy's not so bad. Plenty of legroom if you book early enough. Elena lowered her journal just enough to catch his eye. Her expression remained neutral, almost serene. But there was an edge to it that made Victor pause mid-smirk. She spoke softly without looking up. Funny. I was thinking the same thing about you. Victor froze, caught off guard by her response. For a moment, the hum of the plane filled the silence, punctuated only by the faint rustle of papers and nervous breaths. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances, their discomfort growing thicker with each passing second. Forcing a laugh, Victor tried to regain control of the situation. Excuse me? Finally meeting his gaze, Elena's tone remained even, her words deliberate. Comfort zones can be deceiving. Sometimes we don't belong where we think we do. Her words landed like a stone dropped into still water, rippling through the cabin. The businessmen looked down quickly, avoiding both their eyes. The mother pulled her daughter closer, her grip tightening ever so slightly. Victor opened his mouth to retort, but no sound came out. He closed it again, his jaw working silently as his confidence wavered for the first time. Though he hid it, behind a forced grin, the cracks were beginning to show. Under his breath, glaring at her, he muttered, We'll see about that. Elena didn't respond. She lifted her journal again, resuming her reading as if nothing had happened. But the tension in the cabin lingered, heavy and unspoken. Passengers exchanged fleeting glances, whispers bubbling beneath the surface like steam trapped under glass. The businessman leaned toward the woman beside him, barely audible. Did you hear what he said? The woman shook her head, her voice hushed. It's better not to get involved. The businessman nodded reluctantly, sinking deeper into his seat. Meanwhile, Victor stared out the window, his smirk faltering. Doubt crept in quietly, unnoticed by anyone else. But Elena saw it, and she said nothing. Victor's phone buzzed on the tray table, breaking the tense silence of the cabin. He glanced at the screen before answering, his tone clipped and businesslike. Yes? The lawyer's voice came through faintly, tinny but urgent. We've got a problem. The allegations about discriminatory hiring practices, they're escalating. Someone leaked internal emails. Elena sat across the aisle, her posture relaxed, but her attention sharp. She didn't look up from her tablet, but snippets of the conversation drifted toward her. Words like discrimination, lawsuit, and leak punctuated the otherwise muffled exchange. Victor shifted uncomfortably in his seat, lowering his voice. How bad is it? It's bad. Protesters are gathering outside headquarters as we speak. Social media's blowing up. You need to prepare for fallout. Elena turned a page on her tablet, deliberately slow, as if oblivious to the mounting tension around her. But inside, she pieced together what she'd overheard. Each fragment solidified into clarity. Systemic bias, deliberate exclusion, unchecked privilege. Victor ended the call abruptly, shoving the phone back into his pocket. His jaw tightened as he stared out the window, the weight of the situation settling heavily on him. A nearby passenger whispered behind a magazine to their companion, "Did you hear that? Something big must have happened with his company." Their voices were low, but not low enough. Elena caught fragments without trying. Around them, other passengers exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the change in atmosphere. One man leaned forward slightly, addressing no one in particular. "Isn't that the guy who owns Hargrove Tech? I saw something online earlier." His words trailed off, as Victor shot him a glare, daring him to continue. The man quickly looked away, retreating into silence. Elena finally spoke, her voice calm but cutting through the tension. "Power has a way of crumbling when exposed to light." Victor's head snapped toward her, startled. For a moment he hesitated, unsure how much she'd heard or understood. "You don't know anything," he muttered defensively, though his tone lacked conviction. She met his gaze evenly, her expression unreadable. "Don't I?" Her quiet confidence unnerved him. He opened his mouth to argue but stopped himself, realizing the futility of it. Instead, he sank deeper into his seat, staring straight ahead as if trying to will the moment away. Around them, passengers began scrolling through their phones, news alerts lighting up screens. Headlines about protests and leaked documents spread silently, connecting dots that pointed directly at Victor. A young woman seated near Elena whispered to her neighbor, "I can't believe this is happening right now." Her neighbor nodded, grimly, glancing sideways at Victor. Karma works in mysterious ways. Victor clenched his fists, his knuckles white against the armrest. He felt the shift, the subtle withdrawal of support from those around him. Even his assistant avoided meeting his eyes, burying herself in paperwork instead. Elena watched it all unfold quietly, saying nothing more. Her presence alone seemed to anchor the unraveling reality, a silent reminder that justice often begins with small truths brought into the open. The plane's descent jolted Victor awake from his restless thoughts. His phone buzzed incessantly on the tray table, notifications lighting up the screen. He glanced at it reluctantly, then froze as one message caught his eye. A news alert about Dr. Elena Carter, globally renowned neurosurgeon and keynote speaker, at an upcoming summit attended by world leaders. Victor's gaze darted across the aisle to Elena, who sat calmly, reviewing notes on her tablet. "Wait," he muttered under his breath, realization dawning. "You're... her?" Elena looked up briefly, meeting his wide-eyed stare with a composed expression. "Yes," she said simply, her tone even. Victor leaned back in his seat, visibly shaken. His earlier arrogance faltered, replaced by a flicker of panic. "I didn't know," he stammered, though no one had accused him outright. "You didn't bother to?" Elena replied without looking up, her voice cutting through the cabin's quiet hum. Victor opened his mouth to respond but stopped himself, unsure what to say. Around them, passengers exchanged curious glances, sensing the shift in dynamics. A flight attendant approached hesitantly, announcing their imminent landing. "Please ensure your seats are upright and trays secured," she said, her voice overly cheerful against the tension. As the plane touched down, reporters swarmed the terminal windows outside, cameras flashing like strobe lights. Victor hesitated before standing, adjusting his tie nervously. Elena rose gracefully, gathering her belongings with deliberate calm. In the chaos of disembarking, a reporter shouted, "Dr. Carter, any comment on recent allegations against Hargrove Tech?" All eyes turned to Elena, who paused briefly. Without raising her voice, she responded, "Justice speaks for itself when those in power fail to listen." Victor stood nearby, fidgeting, as flashes illuminated his disheveled appearance. He forced a smile, attempting damage control. "Congratulations on your achievements, Dr. Carter," he said loudly, extending a hand. Elena regarded him coolly, ignoring the gesture. "Success isn't measured by accolades, Mr. Hargrove. It's measured by character. And yours has been exposed today." Her words silenced the crowd momentarily. Victor's face flushed red, his composure crumbling further. He withdrew his hand awkwardly, stepping back as murmurs erupted around them. Outside, protesters chanted Elena's name, holding signs that read, "Justice prevails." Victor watched from afar, his chest tightening as he realized too late how far public opinion had shifted against him. Back home, alone in his mansion, Victor scrolled through headlines detailing his downfall. Messages from estranged colleagues trickled in, polite but distant. One read, "Hope you weather this storm." He whispered to himself, defeated. Who am I now? Regulatory bodies launched investigations into his company, spurred by viral outrage. Board members resigned en masse, leaving him isolated. Meanwhile, Elena delivered a speech at the summit, emphasizing resilience and justice. True power lies not in domination, she said, but in lifting others up. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring countless lives while cementing her role as a beacon of hope. Victor sat alone in his dimly lit study, scrolling through old photos on his phone. Each image, a gala, a handshake, a family vacation, felt like a relic from another life. He paused on one of himself, shaking hands with a governor, his smile wide and confident. Now that same smile felt foreign, almost mocking. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. A text notification popped up. "Hey Dad, hope you're doing okay." It was from his daughter, Mia. The emoji seemed forced, the kind of effort someone makes when they don't know what else to say. Victor stared at the screen, his chest tightening. Another message followed moments later, this time from his brother. "Things will get better, I'm sure. Hang in there." Polite, distant, empty. Victor tossed the phone onto the desk where it skidded to a stop beside an unopened bottle of whiskey. The silence in the room pressed down on him. For weeks, he'd avoided social events, knowing the whispers would follow him wherever he went. Even his employees avoided eye contact now, their once deferential nods replaced by cold indifference. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. Memories flooded in, his father's lectures about power, his own dismissive remarks toward those he deemed beneath him. "Who am I now?" he whispered into the darkened room. Elena stood at the podium in a packed community center, her voice steady and calm as she addressed the crowd. "True power," she began, "lies not in tearing others down but in lifting them up." A young woman in the front row nodded vigorously, tears streaming down her face. "I've spent my life proving myself in spaces that weren't meant for me," Elena continued. "But resilience isn't just about surviving. It's about creating space for others to thrive." Her words resonated deeply, sparking murmurs of agreement throughout the audience. A man near the back raised his hand hesitantly. "How do we start changing things?" he asked. Elena smiled softly. "By listening, by believing people when they tell you their truth, and by standing firm in your values even when it's hard." Across town, a young girl named Maya sat cross-legged on her living room floor, watching Elena's interview on TV. Her mother bustled around the kitchen, humming softly. Maya turned to her, eyes bright. "Mom, I want to be like her someday." Her mother paused, leaning against the counter. "Like who, baby?" "Dr. Carter, she's so brave." Maya hugged her knees to her chest, her voice filled with awe. "She doesn't let anyone make her feel small." Her mother smiled, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You already are brave, sweetheart. Just keep being yourself." Victor stood at his office window, staring down at the protesters marching past his building. Their signs read, "Justice Prevails," the letters bold and unyielding. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had once dismissed such slogans as meaningless noise. Now they haunted him. Each chant, each sign felt like a mirror reflecting his failures. He clenched his fists, his jaw tight. Behind him, the desks sat empty, stripped of computers and files. The company he'd built was collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. Regulatory bodies were implementing reforms across industries, dismantling systems that had protected men like him for decades. Institutions that once shielded him now distanced themselves, eager to prove they were on the right side of history. Victor turned away from the window, his shoulders slumped. In the reflection of the glass, he caught a glimpse of himself. Gone was the confident billionaire. In his place stood a man hollowed out by guilt and regret. "Who am I now?" he whispered again, his voice barely audible. This time there was no answer. Enjoyed this powerful story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Stories like these shine a light on important issues and inspire change. If you want to read more gripping narratives that challenge perspectives, don't forget to like or share and resubscribe for updates. Your support helps us bring you impactful stories that matter. Share this with friends who appreciate thought-provoking fiction, and let's keep the conversation going. Together, we can create awareness and drive meaningful discussions. That subscribe button now. You won't want to miss what's next.